So many of us as educators are supporting students experiencing lots of trauma, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges without ever having been truly trained for how to respond.
But one of the key kind of components of trauma-informed care is to ask the question, not what is wrong with you, but what has happened. What do these behaviors mean? Distress is okay, and it's hard for us to kind of tolerate it. Prolonged, unmoving distress is what we're looking for.
I know so many educators come to Breathe for Change and they're just stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're anxious, they're burnt out. How do we navigate our own mental health as other people's mental health surrounding us impacts us so deeply?
This is really, really hard. Let's have some grace with ourselves. And then also to lean into the components of self-compassion. There is a space to kind of double down on a piece that I really like to talk about, which is our gumption. Just a very embodied kind of piece, but I went to the dictionary and the definition is spirited resourcefulness.
As you head back into the new school year, you may be thinking not just about your lesson plans and your classroom routines, but also about the emotional realities that your students are carrying with them into your classroom, into this school community, and maybe even what you're carrying with yourself too. So many of us as educators are supporting students experiencing lots of trauma, anxiety, depression, and other mental health challenges without ever having been truly trained for how to respond. And in this conversation, I'm so excited to be with you, Dr. Allison Briosche-Smith. She is going to be helping us think about what mental health actually means in the school setting. We're going to talk about how to actually notice what students may need and how to create classrooms that feel safe, connected, and supportive from the very beginning of the school year. So, Allison, once again, so excited to have you back on the podcast. And I just want to dive in with you. Like, to start, let's just start with the basics. Mm-hmm. When we say mental health, what do we actually mean, especially in a school context?
I think the easy way for us to think about it is that we are often paying attention to health. And we often think about health as, what we eat or how we move our bodies. But mental health is about our emotional life and our emotional health. And it's also about the health of our thoughts. And that feels a little maybe weird to say, but it's how we're thinking. How we're thinking and how we feel. And the last kind of component that I'll kind of mention, it's also about our relationships with others. So if we just think about, it's the emotional life, what's kind of going on and how we think about things, but also how we're getting along with others. And it's part of the whole package of health in general, whether or not we're in movement, whether or not we're sick, whether or not, our bodies are healthy or we have access to food. It's another kind of factor that's actually really important.
And you've talked a lot with me about normalizing fluctuations in mental health. And what does that actually mean? And why is this framing so important for us as educators who are holding space for our students to learn and evolve and deal with all the things that they're dealing with in their lives?
Yeah, well, there's two main kind of pieces to kind of think about. One of which is that in an emotional life, we actually might think about or get lots of pressures around articulating that health means something that's stable, or that it means always being happy or always having, we actually might articulate it or think about health as some sort of optimal kind of place. So that's
there's good health, there's bad health.
There's bad health, right? And so people are I'm sad. That must be a sign of bad mental health. No. That the fluctuations and the movement of you should be sometimes happy and sometimes sad and angry, have a full repertoire of those. That's one thing to really think about. So it's not that health is some sort of optimization of kind of happiness or wellness, but rather a full movement through those. So that's just in general. And then we come to kids. Kids are learning. And there's development. And I move like this because there's supposed to be fits and starts and movement.
Right.
So fluctuations and trying things on, learning to even recognize feelings, have experiences. So we've got two things that are going on, development and also the full range of what affects, emotions, feelings, and thoughts should kind of look like. So those are the two caveats. Yeah.
You're reminding me of how when we developed our emotional intelligence curriculum, the final competency is wholeness, because it's so important to have an empowering relationship with all emotions, right? It's not like some emotions are negative, so to speak, and others are positive. It's like we all experience the full range, and there's fluctuations. And then any day at 9 a.m., I'm going to be feeling something different. Yeah. And so too are our students. Same as
And that's actually what we're looking for, and what we or teachers can become kind of attuned to, especially in the beginning of the year. You're going to have to tap into like, what's the range that this kid really has? Where do they really move, right? So it's not just here. What's the kind of scope and the range that they kind of have as you get to know them?
Totally. And, our teachers are starting the school year. And I know, at least in our master's courses, so many of them come to me and they say, like, I've never been trained in how to support students who are experiencing mental health challenges, whether it's depression or anxiety or different forms of trauma or even suicidality. And so, you're a psychologist and you get this work through and through. And so what feels most important for our educators to understand, to know, and to be able to kind of work with as they're moving into the beginning of the school year?
Well, I think first is that initial kind of recognition, which is that most teachers haven't been trained and supported. I think about it as like support to do all of the things that kids present with us. And that's hard because teachers are frontline, first line. They're the ones that are seeing it, interacting, and noticing things. If something's wrong with going on in the family or elsewhere, it's teachers that are frontline. So to kind of think about that, maybe the opportunity that teachers have are to notice and to see and to wonder and to get information, but the responsibility, I know it feels like that, but is not to solve the whole problem.
Yeah.
So that recognition was like, this might be a mental health issue. Maybe I need help with this. Or this might be, a health issue. Maybe I need help with this. Although what's going to come in the classroom is the whole body, the whole person. So it's frontline. But I think even that kind of recognition of, this might be something that's outside of what I can do. I know that's hard, especially when we want to take care of them so badly, and also when you're positioned to do so. But that recognition, I think, is really important.
And then, okay, so I recognize that, oh, wow, there's these behaviors that are presenting themselves in my classroom. I don't really understand exactly what's going on, but I know that this is likely something that has to do with perhaps a mental health challenge. What do I do from there? Once I recognize, then what's my next step?
One thing is, I think there's a nuance in thinking about the kind of recognition. I know that we're going to talk about this, and I've had a chance to talk about this in different ways. But one of the key kind of components of trauma-informed care is to ask the question, not what is wrong with you, but what has happened, right? So you might be confronted with classroom behaviors. They're like, what is up with this kid, right? But the invitation is to think, what has happened? What do these behaviors mean? What's being communicated? What need is behind that? So that range of kind of questions, especially the what need is being communicated, and you're not going to figure it out in a second. You have to build that relationship and know them and figure it out. So that part. The second part is the invitation to think about, how can I get help? Right? So is that help because I have, a peer teacher that's been through this before? Do I have some school administration? I hope that there's a counselor who's available. Do I have a relationship with family, with other kids in the space? Like, to think about who can I kind of connect with to help me think about this. And I know that those structures are really impacted in schools. Yeah, great. We have a counselor who comes by 2 hours every Tuesday. That's hard. But to kind of think about, what are the other folks and people I can be in relationship with that I could kind of pull upon to get some help and to think about it.
And as educators, I know it's so hard for many of us to ask for help because we're so used to giving our full selves to everybody and forget that we too, like we can ask for help when we don't know. It's not bad or wrong. It's totally okay. In fact, it's better to open it up to the community and seek the resources that will best support this student in this context, which is also going to best support us for sure when we have that sense that we're not alone in this, right? And, you mentioned something that we also teach in our trauma-informed teaching course, which is like the distinction between the question, what is wrong with you? Which is, I think, where we can naturally go when things that seem dysregulated or outside of what, quote unquote, we see as normal show up in our space. It's like, what's wrong here? But actually trying to understand what's happening, like truly underneath the surface, like what's been going on at home, what's going on in this child's heart, their mind. That really is the access. And one of the things that you mentioned is like, it's not going to happen overnight. You're not going to just know. And in the beginning of the school year, we have this unique opportunity to start that process of building rapport. And I'm curious what strategies or approaches or pedagogies do you use or recommend educators draw on as they're starting to build these relationships so that they can create that safety where students feel like they can come to us and share more?
Yeah. I mean, I think about two things, and I've learned this mostly from the teachers that I get a chance to kind of support, which is twofold. One of which is curiosity and also containment. And I think about kind of
two
containment.
C's.
The two C's, right? And so one of the pieces around kind of containment is that feels sometimes hard. Like, I don't want to come in there and be like, these are the rules. But actually providing a setting where there are agreements. Or I love seeing classrooms develop a charter. That's one of my favorite things to kind of see, right? That the co-creation of here are the things that are going to help us be safe in this space. So that kind of opportunity, but also curiosity, like this is the time for all of the questions, right? So, and there's sometimes the questions that later on in the year might feel hard, but there are questions of like, what do we eat and how do we celebrate? And, why do we wear this piece of clothing? And what does it mean for us? And like to lean in that this is really about kind of our connection. And to give an opportunity to be really kind of curious and to listen. So teaching those skills of listening and questions. So I've seen classrooms do it where like the kid is like the feature of the day, gets to talk about what they want to bring and show. And then
all about me presentation.
Yeah, right. And then ask the kind of questions, but to demonstrate that kind of curiosity and for teachers to be prepared to offer not everything about themselves, but to offer some of those pieces in terms of kind of curiosity too. But if you can create, and I've seen this done beautifully, just the containment, right? Because that's what kids need in order to feel some level of kind of safety, that this is a place that will take care of me. But this is also a place where my kind of curiosity is about kind of respect and learning, that those are great ways to kind of start the year. But, I again have borrowed that from what I've seen from great teachers. And I think there's some already kind of like wisdom that teachers have about how to get started.
For sure. And we have a whole podcast episode in our back to school series about relationship building. And there's so many strategies that we teach in that episode. But I think what you're getting at the heart of it is, can we create spaces where students feel like they can share their authentic selves? And there's a lot of different ways to do that. Maybe it's like a mindful listening protocol where they're with a small group of kids or another partner and they're sharing about what they care about, what they're excited about, what they're nervous about. And then they get their partner to reflect back what they heard them say. There's like one example. Or an equitable sharing protocol where each person in the class gets an equal opportunity to be the person speaking. And to your point, like to share about who they are, where they come from, like what are they most looking forward to in this learning community? What are the things that they want the community to know about them so they can be best supported, right? There's so many different ways to pull on like those opportunities for our students to feel like, oh, I'm seen. I matter here. And that I think is really the essence of how do you build that rapport from the beginning. And then from there, it's like your students are just going to tell you things too.
Yeah. And you have to be able to listen, and that's hard with all the time and the space, the constraints, and
Right.
But the idea that kids, all of us, actually want to have an opportunity to be seen.
Yeah. And when students are not explicitly coming up to you as an educator and being like, I'm experiencing this challenge, right? What are some of the signs that we can pay attention to when mental health challenges seem to be showing up in our classroom, or we're perceiving that they may be showing up and likely as different behaviors? So what are some of those signs that we should be looking at or looking for?
Yeah, and so this is the kind of like tough part of thinking about and paying attention to fluctuations are normal and kids are changing, right? So we want to say that on one hand, and the other hand is as we build kind of relationships with kids, we need to be able to pay attention and really notice when they come out of their kind of window. They're out of their usual kind of window. Like, wow, they're sleepier than usual. Wow, they're more distracted than usual. They're sadder than usual. So what we would kind of look for is big changes from their usual. And that's the trick of being a child psychologist, is that their usual is changing over time. But we're looking for big differences, right?
Yeah.
We're also just looking for, are they able to be, successful in some way, shape, or form in their connection? And we're looking for, okay, they don't have tons of friends. That's okay, but they have one friend. Or, this happens all the time. Like that group of friends no longer wants to spend time with that one. How are they managing? Right?
At all the different age,
all the way through.
A different flavor of
2 to 22, right?
Inclusion, exclusion, in-group, out-group, all the things. Yeah.
And it's also framing and understanding distress is okay. Right? Distress is okay. And it's hard for us to kind of tolerate it. Prolonged, unmoving distress is what we're looking for.
The chronic stress. Yeah.
It's all the time, right? We want to have some experience, see them move and come back, right? Wow, they've been really, really listless, have a hard time paying attention, or sad and not engaged this entire week. That feels like a lot. So noticing those kinds of things.
You're bringing me right into the science, like the nervous system, like when we're in our window of tolerance, or when our students are in that window of tolerance, and all of us have a different window of tolerance, but it's like where we're like able to function in a way that is sustainable. And then there's like, okay, we can move out of the window of tolerance, and you either move into a hyper aroused state, that fight, flight. And it's like, that's like the behaviors that might be a little bit more disruptive in the classroom, so to speak, like anxiety or loud, or the hypo aroused state, which is like too little arousal. That's where it's the withdrawn, the closed off, the shut down. And it's in noticing, I'm starting to pick up where my students' window of tolerance is. It's day one, it's week one. Okay, getting a little bit more info here. But over time, you start to see, oh, wow, they're moving into that over-aroused state or the under-aroused state that's outside of their window. And that's what I should be paying attention to.
Yep. And it's also a gift. That noticing and that narration that we can provide with kids is a gift and a training for them. That's the education, right? That we can actually equip kids to notice, hey, I noticed that you seem to be a little bit off. Am I getting that right? Are you feeling that? We can talk about, and I've seen teachers do this as well, where kids actually create their own kind of like windows. They don't frame it in terms of windows, but like, I'm doing okay. I'm having a hard time. Whether it's the feelings, chart, or how you're doing. I remember we had a little girl come over for a play date, and she was a little bit kind of sad, and she was taking some time. So I asked my daughter, she's 8, I'm like, what's kind of going on? She goes, she's having a hard time right now, but when that happens, she needs a couple of minutes just to go ahead and be with herself. So we give her the space that she needs.
Her little bestie knew.
Well, and so I asked her, I'm like, well, how did you figure that out? She learned it from the teacher. She's like, this is what our teacher does when this little girl has a little bit of a harder time. So we all know what to do. So to think about that kind of language, right? Like it's kind of bonkers. You have to like recognize that in yourself, have someone else recognize it, narrate it for you, talk. But, you know, this is third grade. It is possible, right, to be able to kind of teach and train around those kinds of pieces.
I would argue it's even possible in pre-K because I did it in my classroom. I mean, all the way up to us as adults. We all need a different variation and flavor of this.
Yeah. But those are the kinds, and I would kind of say, if we kind of offer that kind of support, that narration, and try it out, and they're still bumped out of the window, that's when we start getting curious about, I wonder if something else is going on here, right? I wonder if I need help or perspective in a different kind of way. What kind of questions can I ask, or what can I be listening for to kind of know what might be going on?
And I imagine, I know I experience this in certain at times of my teaching career, and I imagine other educators feel this too, where it's like, okay, is it actually like okay for me to like assume that someone else is feeling a certain way and name that? Like, oh, it seems like you're frustrated, or it seems like you're really devastated, or it seems like you're anxious. Like, does that feel off? Is it, too much? And so I totally am with you in that is absolutely the doorway in, but it can be really hard and uncomfortable for us as educators to start to integrate into our actual practice. So I'm curious, like, how you think about that for folks who may not be so comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, I think as you're kind of raising up, it's tricky, right? Like, so I don't want to get in the space of like, you're angry and telling other people what their feelings are.
The blame game.
Yeah. Or, and there's also like, I think about this all the time with little, there's no one who hates being told that they are tired than a little kid. I'm not tired.
Especially a little kid who's actually tired.
Tired, right?
Oh my gosh. When I do that to my daughter, it's like turns into a massive tantrum. She's like, I'm not tired.
Right. So that's also the piece too. And to think about like what's going on there. Like it's part of the frustration is that people don't want to be tired, or I don't know how to name this as tired, or it's going to take me a minute, or I'm so tired, they get stuck. So I think the other kind of opportunity that's there is, that we can do as teachers or therapists or parents is that, when I see you doing these behaviors, it's telling me that you're feeling a big feeling, or you're feeling either tired or hungry, or something's going on. So when I see those behaviors, that's what you're telling me. Is that what you mean to tell me? There's a way that I can actually kind of put it in, like, here's how I'm kind of receiving it.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit kind of a gap. There's a chance for them to say, like, I'm not tired. I'm really just frustrated, or I am, or, let me tell you that I'm tired. I think half the time they want to be able to tell the feeling themselves.
100%.
There's no wrong way to do that. As you said, it's the window in to open the conversation, which is that I'm interested in how you're feeling, and here's how I'm receiving what you're sending.
Would you say the exact same thing to an elementary, middle, and high school student, or how would you flip the script a little bit?
I actually use very much of the similar language, especially with teens.
So do I, which is super interesting. People are like, well, how do you say that for the older students? I'm like, literally just like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, when I see these kinds of behaviors, when you are staring off in the distance and not responding as we're trying to have dinner, that communicates to me that maybe you're distracted, tired, or something's going on. What's going on? Nothing. Okay. When I see these behaviors, it tells me that something's going on. It sounds like you're having a hard time identifying it, but here's what I'm seeing, right? So teens will say, nothing wrong. I'm fine. I'm chill. Okay. Then look at me and talk to me and respond. That's not chill. Like, you know what I'm saying? So there's an invitation to have them narrate their own experiences, but we're also teaching them about, when you send these messages, this is how other people receive. That's complicated, right? That's a whole bunch of things. People think that I'm angry all the time, and I'm not. Okay, that's important information, right? And I talk about this with my older kids and older kids too. Is that racialized? Is that gendered? Is that a social construct? What's kind of going on? Older kids, actually younger kids get this too. But the space is to think about how they can be in relationship with it, and to go all the way back to your question around mental health. Mental health is about how we are in relationship with our thoughts and our feelings. And having the ability to understand how I make sense of them, how I can put them out there, but also how others receive them as well. and to
Well,
make
then
choices about it.
you asking those questions and naming, hey, this is what I'm noticing. Am I accurate? Am I right? Like, what's going on here? And I love that in that second example that you just did, you offered a couple of options. It was like, you may be distracted or tired or something. Like, what's going on is, and it gives the student or your child permission to share their experience without being told exactly what's happening to them, but like what's going on inside you right now. It's really, really powerful. And, I love that you talked about mental health as your relationship with your thoughts and your emotions. It's like, wow, that's so powerful. And it's, just as important as our physical health, right? It's all of these things make such a huge difference for how we show up on a day-to-day basis, how we feel, our well-being, how we can perform in school, whether it's educators or students. And I'm curious, as educators, we carry the weight of the world on our shoulders, and then it shows up in our classroom, and so much of it has to do with students bringing the weight of their worlds on their shoulders into the classroom. And so I'm curious, I know so many educators come to Breathe for Change and they're just stressed, they're overwhelmed, they're anxious, they're burnt out. And there's some space over summer to rejuvenate and to kind of re-find our feet again, but then we're doing it all over again. And so how do we navigate our own mental health as other people's mental health surrounding us impacts us so deeply? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think I just really appreciate the framing of it. And I think it's an invitation for us to think about wow, this is extraordinarily difficult work. And so part of that kind of framing is to lean into the grace that we should be offering ourselves with it then. This is really, really hard. Let's have some grace with ourselves. And then also to lean into the components of self-compassion, which is, I'm having a hard feeling. I'm not the only one. This is a very human thing. And to be able to treat ourselves with some kindness around it as well. And that kindness, I think, that kindness just means to not punish ourselves with some sort of expectation that you wouldn't be bothered or you could handle it differently. But rather, no wonder. Right. I've heard a definition of vicarious trauma, which is that vicarious trauma is the idea about the traumas that other people carry when we hold them. There's something that happens, and it's the inevitable process of change that happens to our mental, physical, psychological, and spiritual selves because we care about people who are suffering.
Oh,
right. So it's so a beautiful. Different frame.
It's so beautiful. Yeah, in other contexts, I hear secondhand trauma. It's it's all saying essentially a similar thing of we're carrying the weight of your world's shoulders on our shoulders because we love you, because we care. We wouldn't be in this profession if we didn't feel a calling to do that.
Yeah. So that's a different frame than I'm not tough enough. I can't hack it. I shouldn't be in this kind of, it's not that. It's, wow, I really love and care about these folks. And why wouldn't I be changed by loving folks who are suffering? Why wouldn't I be changed by that? In really hard ways, but also maybe in other really kind of compelling ways as well. So, that's just one way of kind of thinking about and kind of appreciating, while also there is a space to kind of double down on a piece that I really like to talk about, which is our gumption. Right, which is another way I think about gumption. I love the term gumption. Gumption is something that I came into contact with because our gospel choir director used to say, "Sing it with more gumption." Right?
Oh, I love it.
And it's just a very embodied kind of piece. But I went to the dictionary, and the definition is spirited resourcefulness.
Ooh. So good.
Right. Have you ever met a kid?
Spirited resourcefulness.
Resourcefulness, right? Wow. And so I love that. So we also have to be able to appreciate the places in which we are, overwhelmed and struggling and bearing witness and being altered. And also let us not forget, I think about this in 1,000 different ways. If you have been and made it through a classroom year, You have some spirited resourcefulness.
You have some gumption.
You have some gumption. If you have figured out how to survive that kind of space, you have some gumption because you are working with kids that do themselves. Spirited resourcefulness, right? The idea that we can kind of pull into this and we can make it, and to just really kind of reconnect with our fire capacity. We lines of generations of folks have been serving as teachers. I think about how many women have been serving as teachers in particular ways. And
all of the women in my family, that's for sure.
Right? Or thinking about how many African Americans, as I kind of think of my own history, men, women, whoever, who've moved kind of through. So an opportunity to pause and connect with our gumption. Might be a good opportunity to kind of think about holding both of those, the kind of tenderness that we need, but also the kind of fierceness that we need to kind of move forward.
I love that. It's like just both can be true at the same time. And when they are, it's actually really integrated and beautiful. And that's what makes us able to literally do the work. You have to like be able to turn in and love and appreciate and acknowledge yourself and not make yourself wrong or be ashamed or like feel like you don't get it, right? Yeah. Because that's not serving you or your community. Yeah. That like itty bitty shitty committee coming on in and telling you about how terrible of a person you are, turn that off. It's not working. Need that.
Yeah. Yeah. And, Kristen Neff's research on self-compassion is so compelling. And it speaks to exactly this kind of piece about like turning off the kind of shame, leaning into those components. But she's got a newer version that actually speaks about like the tender self-compassion and fierce self-compassion, which is about protecting and providing. And it's that kind of, she has this image of like the mama bear. It's that fierceness. So I think about it as gumption, the research that she's really produced, which is quite good in terms of health and engagement, really shows that those aspects of tenderness and care and common humanity and mindfulness and kindness are paired with fierceness, protection, loving, holding, all of those kinds of pieces. So those are the options that we can lean into.
Gosh, you're bringing me back to my classroom when, I just had kids from all walks of life, and a lot of them were experiencing immense trauma. And that fierce gumption, whatever you want to call it, it would come in hard because I loved these kids and I was not going to let like the pain and the suffering that they were experiencing be like their norm if I had anything to do with it. So it was like, how can I advocate? What can I do? How can I protect this child who's experiencing things that I never experienced and that no child should ever have to experience or see in their lifetime. And I think it's that fierce fire within us as educators. That's the passion that brings us into this profession, right? Paired with the love and the care and all of that. But it's the fire that each and every one of us carry that it's like we can turn inward and connect to that fire when we are interacting in these challenging moments. And, this is reminding me of what you and I love to talk about, just trauma-informed teaching. I think there's this like belief that I hear is like, oh, well, I need to be trauma-informed for the people who experience trauma. And it's like, hold on. First of all of us experience trauma. And second of all, like this is just best teaching practice. Period. So can you talk a little bit more about how you think about trauma-informed teaching?
Yeah, I really resonate with the experience that you were talking about. I often come into either classrooms or schools or organizations and folks are interested and want to kind of commit to trauma-informed care, but they feel like it's something added or separate or different. And like in this small group,
I'm going to take a trauma-informed approach.
And just
in my math lesson, because this kid's in it, I'm going to teach in a trauma-informed way. No. That's not what we're talking about.
No, we're actually talking about, and the reframe that I like to say is the highest quality of care is trauma-informed. It's just like the highest quality of care is equitable and accessible.
Totally.
all of those things. So it's not some added new thing. It just turns out it's the highest quality of care. So a simple kind of example is one of the things that we kind of frame for kids who have been impacted by trauma is that transitions are really, really hard. So I worked a lot with kids, for example, in foster care. And so kids in foster care have lots and lots of transitions, right? So many of those kids would be impacted when we get ready to have a transition in the kind of classroom. They might be struggling to make that kind of move and do that. So one of the things that helps those kids is to flag when transitions are coming. So here's the next thing that we're going to do. Here's our schedule. Here's what's going to happen next. It also helps to have a regularity of that kind of schedule. So have it on the board, communicate, tell them what happens. And that when things end up changing, we give kids a heads up, right?
Totally.
So that's really, really helpful for kids who experience things like, lots of movement in foster care and changes in those kinds of pieces, right? But it happens to be good for any kid as well.
Totally.
So it's the kind of thing that many classrooms have: schedules, communication, what's going on, transitions are just regulating for kids in different ways. But it turns out that when we kind of dial it up, it's helpful for kids who experience kind of trauma as well. So that's just high quality care. Communicating what's happening next, telling people what's gonna, narrating what's kind of going on, active kind of listening. Those are all things that help, especially in the context of trauma, but are really great all the way through.
Yeah, one of the principles that we teach in our trauma-informed teaching course is creating consistency and predictability. And if you think about it, for most folks, I imagine, who experience trauma, that is taken away from them. The consistency might be that they're experiencing something over and over again that's definitely not supportive for them. But the predictability, usually it's like on edge, you don't know what's coming. And so when we as educators set context, which is another trauma-informed teaching principle we teach, the ability to clearly frame and set context. This is where we've been. This is where we are now. This is where we're going. That is so huge for students who didn't have the agency to choose where they were, where they are now, where they're going, and don't have that predictability. We can provide that to them, and it allows them to trust again, which takes time, but the routine, the consistency, their ability to trust what's going to happen to them versus like not know, it's a game changer. And so these are moments in between the content, right? This is framing the content. It's the transitions. We are teaching in every moment that we're interacting with our students.
Yeah. And you've just beautifully kind of described why the structure and predictability is really helpful in the context of trauma, what trauma does and what trauma means. That predictability is also really, really good for kids who are neurodivergent. Right? It's really helpful to communicate the schedule, to let someone know that what's predictable, to be able to manage. It happens to be the high quality of care that we provide for folks that are on the spectrum. It happens
it's good for everybody.
It's good for everybody, right?
Totally.
So it's the highest quality of care, right? The highest quality of care in the context of trauma is trusting relationships, caring, competent, consistent relationships. Turns out that works for everybody, right? It's just also the types of things that maybe it's about kind of putting it and kind of highlight or just making sure that it's kind of present, that those are the things that are there. But I'm sure as folks kind of move through, and that's also the kind of piece too, that kind of toggling between, do I need some sort of specialized knowledge? Maybe, but do I have something that I can kind of rely upon, which is good, solid relationships? Yes, right? Yes. To kind of come back to those kinds of pieces.
And I think when we create these kinds of structures, right, especially from the beginning of the school year, it's like day one, right? This is how our class is going to go each day. And this is how this activity is going to be. This is what we're going to do after it. And so it's like, oh, you're just allowing your students to ground into the present moment and land versus feel like they have to question what's happening, what's going to happen to me. This is unfamiliar, especially because I'm new to this classroom in the beginning of the school year. And so sometimes I I love spontaneity. I'm like one of those people who like loves it, but I also am obsessed with structure. But it's like spontaneity, flexibility, creativity, all those things come when structure is set. It's like the structure lends itself for people to be able to freely tap into their creativity, for our students to be able to feel like, ooh, I can be safe here expressing my authentic self. Or, okay, I know what's happening. So now I can like, do whatever it is that I'm feeling inspired to do in this moment. The structure lends itself to the spontaneity and the creativity. They don't have to be separate, right? It almost becomes the container. It's so totally. So, for educators who are starting the school year, whether they've been in it for decades or they're just beginning their teaching profession, I'm just like, what are some offerings that you have about like their mindset around this work around mental health? Because I think mindset carries so much weight, right? Mental health, you said it's about our thoughts, and that's where mindsets stem from. So
I mean, I think it's always a good time to lean into growth mindset and the idea that, like, I'm going to learn this year. I'm going to grow. I'm going to exercise these muscles. And even leaning in with that kind of expectation, which is like, I'm going to be challenged and I have this opportunity to learn and grow. And what can I learn about this? How can I do this? That opens you up to a different approach than I'm going to be defeated by this year. I'm going to be beat down by this year. And we have those feelings sometimes. Like, oh, this is going to really be like.
It's going to take me down again.
Yeah. But to try to think about like, I can be curious and I can be courageous and I can need rest and patience. But I am going to learn a lot this year. And that's also what we want our kids to come into the classroom for, right? How many of our kids are coming in, with their experiences thinking about, I'm going to be shamed again this year. I'm going to struggle again this year. I'm going to be alone again this year, right? And so we have to frame that there are kids coming in with that piece. So our approach about like, no, we're going to do really hard things this year and we're going to figure it out together. That would be the kind of approach. It's an approach that I hope that I embody for the people that I kind of work for. It's what I certainly hope my kids kind of step in with as well. And definitely the kids that I serve. It's actually what the kids I serve teach me all the time.
Our kids are our best teachers, right?
Yeah. They're teaching me like, look what I learned, look what I can do. Yeah.
You're reminding me about the distinction between having a strengths-based perspective or taking a strengths-based approach and a deficit-based approach, like the difference between like, the question, what's wrong here versus what's happening here. That's an example, but, that student is misbehaving versus that student is experiencing something right now. I want to learn more, right? How do we just hold their strengths in these moments of challenge and not play the blame game or point fingers or there's something wrong here. They're just experiencing something.
And that holding in that space might not be available to us in the moment when we've got 16 kids and we got to get on the bus and he's yelling again and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Just to hold ourselves, like we might need to be like, get on the bus. We might need to come back. Our rules of the classroom say that we keep our hands to ourselves and we don't hurt each other. Let's go. There are consequences.
Fierce comes in. Fierce.
We can do fierce. And that's the intersection between our warmth and demandingness. And that kind of piece, we know from, tons of research parenting wise, that we have to have high expectations and high warmth. And that when we do that, we'll get them on the bus, we'll figure it out, but to come back to that kind of piece, right, of that kind of holding. So just that, I know that sometimes it's a struggle for me to, in the moment, hold my most spacious, kind of view of their behavior when I just want all 6 of the kids to listen to me right now.
Totally.
We have some time, we have some space to kind of come back to that in the ways that we think and to allow us to come back the next day.
Love it. So, as we close, what's your hopes, your dreams, your wishes for educators as they start the school year as it relates to everything we've been talking about?
Well, my first hope is that the communities around the kids that teachers serve uh, offer the love and the grace and the support that teachers deserve. It's not
Mhm.
only on teachers. So, just a place of recognition, like, damn, y'all working hard. We appreciate you.
So hard.
So I think just want to offer kind of that. I hope that teachers enter into spaces where they are held and valued and seen in the ways that we want our kids to. Um,
Mm,
that's my hope.
me too. Well, Allison, this has been such a lovely conversation. I'm always feel like I've learned so much just being in your presence. And thank you for contributing your knowledge, wisdom, and just gifts to all the educators who are listening. And if you are listening and you feel like you want to go even deeper on the Breathe for Change website, breatheforchange.com, we have so many different resources around how to support and sustain your own well-being throughout the school year, and also how to support the mental health outcomes of your students. And so check out those resources. You can come to TeacherCon, our conferences, where we'll dive into more practices that are relevant to this conversation. And just good luck with the beginning of the school year. We're so excited for you. And just know that everything you're doing is exactly where you should be. So thank you. Bye.